All right. How do you scale your business and have a positive mindset, all while growing a family? Today, I am so excited to be chatting with my new friend, Renée Warren. She's an award winning entrepreneur and inspirational speaker, author, and the founder of We Wild Women. And in 2012, Renee founded a content marketing and PR agency, taking it from the ground to seven figures as a globally recognized company. She's the co-author of Get Covered, How to Craft, Pitch, and Tell Your Startup Story to Get More Customers. Whew, you are a busy lady. Welcome, Renee.
Thanks for having me.
It's always fun when you read the bios out and you're like, wow, look at all the things I've done. Like it's kind of cool when you hear that read back, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, with my podcast, I always introduce my guest and I say, pretend like you're coming down as a contestant on The Price is Right
Yeah.
because you've accomplished so much. Yeah. And some people are like, it's so awkward hearing you read my bio, but I'm like, it's actually a blessing for you to hear what you've achieved and your accomplishments. So thank you.
I know. We need to celebrate that more. I think it's so easy to just kind of skim past oh, I wrote a book. Okay, what's the next thing? Oh, I started this. On to the next thing. And we don't often stop to just celebrate those moments like, holy crap, I wrote a book. I
Yeah.
created a product. I built a seven-figure business. Whatever those things are, big and small, they need to be celebrated.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to just dive in because you built a seven-figure business while having two babies in a year. Like that's
The
two babies in a year. That makes me want to go cross-eyed just even thinking about it. Mine are 4 years apart, so had a little bit more time between them. But how do you build a
yeah.
seven-figure business, have two babies, maintain your health, or did you? I mean,
Yes.
let's get into the nitty-gritty of this because I don't know if anybody else, but I want to know how you did this.
So the health was kind of the last thing that was on the to-do list. Going into it, well, first of all, my kids that close in age were not planned at all. It just happened. And
I'm not sure if they ever are, but
no,
I could be wrong.
but we're thankful. It's just like one big long phase for everything, right? Like potty
Yeah.
training and bottles and all this stuff. So that's over. But my husband is also an entrepreneur. And in that time, back in 2012, 2013, he had one startup that was acquiring and he was raising around for his third startup. And so he was on planes and cars just going around North America. And we were at points high-fiving in airports. I was going to meet a client in like Phoenix, Arizona, and then he was like gone to San Francisco, and like I was going through security and he was coming off the plane, we'd be waving, and it happened more often than we really liked. So it got to the point where we were exhausted. We were, especially me, I was missing key milestones with my kids, like starting to crawl or rolling over or like the first bites of solid foods. Was for a mom, like for me especially, I was like, I wanted to be there for that. And so finally I was like, Dan, this can't we can't keep doing this. It's unhealthy for us individually, as a partner, as parents, unhealthy for our kids. So what's got to give? It turns out he was up for anything. I was the one that was the massive roadblock in implementing systems, hiring people, delegating stuff, because as we all know as women, there's these insane societal expectations of us to do all the things. So,
Right.
who am I as a female, as a mother, to delegate nighttime routines with my kids, to delegate them being picked up from school by somebody else, to delegate groceries and cleaning and all this stuff? Because I was raised in a household of which I respect my parents, but I had to do everything. And so we started by getting a cleaning lady in twice a week. So instead of doing a full 10-hour one day, we divided it up into 2 days. She came Tuesdays and Fridays. She also did the groceries. And then the big game changer for us was when you have a newborn, there's one thing you miss is sleep.
Yeah.
And so we hired a night nanny. And it took me so much personal development to be okay with having my child sleep in the spare room with our nanny so that she can manage him if he woke up in the night for feedings. And so that Dan and I could at least get some sleep a few nights a week. And so how we managed to have these babies, focus on our marriage, grow our businesses was all wrapped up in this thing called applying business-like philosophies to our family life. So that meant spreadsheets, that meant quarterly retreats, that meant weekly meetings. It meant looking at our finances, our travel schedules, anything to be delegated, deleted. So, like anything a CEO would do to help their business operate more efficiently, we applied to our family life. And that's how we did
I
it.
love that. I think some people might say, "Oh, there's no heart in that," but I'm like, okay, and we do that in some degree, but now I'm like, "Oh, I bet you we could even double down on that," you know? I
Yeah, but
love that
I'd like to
philosophy.
talk about that like no heart in it. And that's exactly what I had to get past. The reality
Mhm.
is what it gave me was more quality time back with my kids. And I
Yeah.
think that's what we failed to recognize is like, yes, we were in a position in which we could afford these things, first of all. But there's a lot of people that I've coached and taught over the years that just pulled in family members or friends to help them with these things. There's ways of doing everything. And so the lack of heart actually showed up in the more quality time I had with my kids because I wasn't doing the groceries. And then I stopped feeling guilty about it. I haven't stepped in a grocery store in years. And you know what? I'm proud of that because I hate the grocery store so much. And I hate cooking. I actually don't mind doing dishes and I don't mind doing laundry. So I will tackle those things. But really, it's like, what are the things you delegate in your business so that you can focus on your zone of genius? Well, the zone of genius for your family life is the quality time with your children or with your partner. So how can you delegate anything else that you don't like doing that you shouldn't be doing in order to maintain that relationship and those that connection point with your children? So that was our focus in the family life. And we do know this though, how things are at home reflects how things are at work. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a rocky home life, it's going to be reflective in your business. And most entrepreneurs fail to work on their personal relationships with their partner or with their children before working on their business. But it all needs to start at home. And so once we got that figured out, the business started growing and
Mm.
clients started paying us more money. And they started to sign even longer contracts and they were referring us to other people. And it was exciting. And yes, it was overwhelming because there was so much work, but I'd get to go home and celebrate that with my family. And then
Yeah.
my kids got to see mama so excited and so happy because she's focusing on something that she loves to do.
Yeah. That's really important to me as well as a mother is I have 2 boys and I'm like, I wanna see them see me loving what I do and having their dad support me in that, you know? He's off actually taking them to soccer right now while I'm here
Nice.
working, you know?
Yeah. No,
Because this is
that's so important. Yeah. But there's soccer in Europe? Weird. I didn't know that. Football.
yes, well, yes, we have to switch up the language, you know, but yeah, so I think that's an amazing philosophy to really apply that, you know, what you delegate in your business, look at what you can delegate in your home that can help you thrive more in your business and also with your family, right? Instead of like, oh my gosh, I have to go to the grocery store again or cook dinner or do dishes or whatever that might be.
Yeah, exactly. And like the moment you can, I guess, I don't want to say forgive yourself, but forgive whoever imposed these expectations on you because you just shouldn't be doing these things. And quite frankly, like you're terrible at it. Sometimes I'll ask my husband for a massage and he sucks at it. And I'm like, are you actually bad at this or are you doing this on purpose so I never ask you? And he's like, ooh, that's a good question. Um, but I'll say about cooking, I am not good at it because I don't like it. And I'm like,
Mm,
why would I cook? What's the point? I don't have there's no enjoyment in this. And why can't I figure out something else to solve this problem? So we have this thing called fresh prep where it's like, the food comes and you just pretty much warm up the food, cook some of the food.
yeah.
Um, and then we'll eat out a couple nights a week. And then we have somebody here that helps us full time, Betty, who does the cooking as well. So that instead of me slaving in the kitchen, I'm playing board games with my boys, or I'm helping them read, or I'm helping them do homework, or we're going to basketball, or we're playing soccer. Like it works. And let me tell you, the boys appreciate it too.
Yeah. So find a way to outsource your family, your home stuff, just like you would, right? So many people have a VA or, some kind of
Mhm.
assistant in their business to take care of admin stuff, email, right? What if you could have somebody cooking for you, going to the beloved grocery store? I hear you on that one. It's not my favorite. It's
No,
not
I
my
end
favorite.
up buying all the wrong stuff and so much junk food. That's just why I can't go in there.
So a bit of self-preservation.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, cookies, chocolate, peanut butter.
All the delicious things. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So how do you, in all of this, how do you keep that really positive mindset? And I think that that's obviously a key element of this is that you're outsourcing, you're bringing in the right people. And I know you're big on that. So what are some of the key things for founders to have a really strong mindset?
I call it ABC. Always be curious. And curious means that you should always be reading. You should always be listening to podcasts, really be into personal development because let me tell you, personal development isn't a weekend course, it's a lifelong journey. And if you're
Yeah.
not constantly asking questions, digging deeper, opening up something new, learning a new instrument, or reading something that you would never think you'd ever read, you aren't going to actually grow as a person. And you're doing everyone around you a disservice. And so what that meant for us was like, oh, our rule here is 10 pages a day. Like we read 10 pages a day. And sometimes those are thick books that have really, really tiny font. And you're like, why did I pick up this one? And then sometimes it's like a Ryan Holiday book where there's short little pages and you're like, woohoo, I got my 10 pages in. But if you're
Nice.
forcing yourself, creating these habits, it's like the personal development journey actually becomes something that really fuels you. And that helps with mindset. And I never ever read the cool new trendy books. I read the book I need to read now. And so it's like if I'm on this like week-long or month-long parenting thing because there's a new milestone or development with my child, then I'm grabbing the book that my best friend recommended on my shelf that's been collecting dust for years. If I'm at this phase of my
Sounds
business,
right.
yeah. And like if
Yeah.
I'm in this phase of my business where I need to focus on marketing, it's like I'm going to grab that marketing book. Maybe I'll reread it or it's something new.
Yeah.
But the mindset piece is always be curious. And the advantage for like Laura, both you and I, is we get the chance to have conversations with incredible people, like on your show, on my podcast, and I'll ask these questions. There's one woman, Tracy Litt, I interviewed her a couple weeks ago, and I asked her about imposter syndrome. She's like, "Oh, let me tell you about that. I don't believe in it." And then she sent me a link about the fallacy of imposter syndrome. I was like, "Oh, I never looked at it this way before. Thanks for sharing." Right?
Yeah.
So when you're faced with something you've never considered or something you might be in a disagreement with, it actually opens up this possibility for you to grow because you're like, okay, I'm going to learn something new, or I'm going to look at the other side and see their perspective.
Yeah. I think it's being open to other people's experience, other people's perspective, learning something new, like that idea of being curious. And, that I'm living abroad this year with my family. And one of the biggest things I wanted my kids to get out of this in particular was to reinvigorate their curiosity. It's been lost in the last few years with virtual school and all of that with being at home and that isolation. Well, now they're being homeschooled, but it's a bit different. But it was about reinvigorating the curiosity, right? They're seeing Greek ruins from 300 BC and climbing towers and hearing multiple different languages and navigating airports and walking. And you're like,
Yes.
and they're like, ooh, this is interesting, and then we're like, I'd like to learn more about this. Then we go online and then we learn more about the place we went or the thing we saw. And that's really, to me, what this is all about. For me, it's kind of filling my cup of curiosity and just expansion, both creatively and in so many ways. But to see that through my kids is really magical.
Yes. We leave tomorrow for 3 weeks away in Europe as well. And the question that people ask me are like, well, what are you going to do for school? Like, what about schooling? And I'm like, travel is the best education. You're forced into different cultures. You're forced to try to learn another language or to like see things differently. And then you get to see these buildings that are thousands of years old, and you get to study the history and then ask the questions. So to me, it's like, it's the best education.
Absolutely. And we've just got back from 11 days of traveling and airports and navigating and walking and history. And I'm like, yeah, this is absolutely the best education. And I remember that growing up. I traveled extensively with my family. And I still believe that travel and living abroad when I was younger was the best education I ever got.
Yeah, I totally agree too. There's something about, like, my biggest time away was the year I spent in Australia by myself. So after college, university, I went and got a visa and I went and worked in Australia. But the amount of maturity that happened in that year is like, I had to grow to become this incredibly independent person to be able to do this by myself. Now, Australia is a relatively safe and very common to Canada country. So it wasn't hard. Culturally, there wasn't much difference. But I will say I grew so much. And like it was a personal development, I guess, journey that I didn't know I was signing up for that ended up like getting me to that next level in life.
Yeah. I feel like we had a similar journey because after college I moved to England, and that to me was like, well, they speak English. It's a foreign country. It's across the ocean, but it didn't feel quite as foreign, I guess, because there wouldn't be a language barrier, although sometimes there was actually a language barrier. But it felt like that next step. And then from there, I moved to Denmark, right?
Okay.
You know, my dad is from, but I didn't speak the language. So that was like, England was like the, you know, my stepping stone.
It was like the appetizer.
Yeah, it was the appetizer. Now I'm living in Italy, and just this morning we were trying to navigate the Italian, you know, paperwork that is still happening. That we're like, it's a big puzzle. So, you know,
paperwork. Well, I remember when we went to Italy for our honeymoon, when we landed, my husband Dan had the 24-hour flu. This was like in 2015. And I was like, oh, I don't speak Italian. What am I going to do? Well, I opened up Google Translate on my phone and I went to the pharmacy and I put in all the English words of the things I needed to get to him. And it translated into Italian. So I'd walk in there and I'd be like, magnesium. And then I would show the pharmacist, this is what I need. She's like, okay. Then I'd get the next thing and I'd show her. And it was like, it was so easy. So we have all this technology in our back pocket. We don't have any excuses to not be able to communicate with people that don't speak the same language.
Yeah.
And in and out in like 2 minutes. And I got Dan all the things he needed. And I was like, you good, bud? Because I'm out of here. And I went and I did Rome by myself. And I loved it.
I'm a honeymoon.
I'm a honeymoon.
We always think, and I mean, I think this is just in general in life, in business, in all of the things, is that we always think things are going to be harder than they are. And sometimes you just have to try. And maybe you're not going to say it right, or you're not going to make the right step. But what if it leads to something amazing?
Yeah, full circle moment, because that was our mentality when outsourcing everything in our family life. Like, what if I actually get a good night's sleep? And like the person that was like the voice I heard on my shoulder of hiring this night nanny was my mom. I was like, oh, my mom would so disapprove of this. What would she say? And my husband's like, you don't have to tell her. She doesn't live in this town. She's not going to see it. She doesn't ever have to know. I was like, good point. Really good point. But like, how good can it get? We have 2 full nights of sleep, you know, in a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. We don't have to go to the grocery store. We don't have to cook. Like, this is awesome.
Think of all the time you've gained because of that, and sanity.
Yeah, totally. So that then allowed me to like shovel. I loved shoveling the driveway. I'm so stupid. But I get to like scrape it. So it's like perfectly scraped. And it was like the nicest shovel driveway on the street. And I was proud of that. I could care less about cooking a good meal.
But your driveway.
My driveway was
weird,
exquisitely shoveled.
Funny. We all have our things, right?
I know, right? It's a good workout too.
That is true. It is. I think it's just so fascinating that it's that fear of judgment of others, or whatever that it's, or the shoulds,
Yep.
right? It's what we should do. It's how we think people are going to judge us and how we're living and what we're doing in our life. And that holds us back. And imagine if we could just remove that worry about the judgment that we're projecting. You don't even know if that's how they're going to respond.
Well, like the reality is like any customer, the most angry, upset customer is the one that's going to leave a comment, or the ones that are ecstatic. But all the ones in the middle, 90% of them aren't going to say anything. But
Yeah.
maybe you've inspired them. And so
Yeah.
we have Betty. She works in our house full time. She's a house manager and a personal assistant to us. She helps with literally everything. And there was a long time in having somebody like her in our house that I was ashamed to admit it, because all I could think about was people like, oh, well, good for you, lucky you. And yes, those comments happened. But you know what also happened? Renée, where can I find a Betty? Renée, can you send me the job description you posted to find a Betty? I need to find a Betty.
Yeah.
And I was like, ha. So we've inspired people to think of their family life differently as like this functioning system that should be well oiled, because what you're optimizing for is quality time with your family.
Mm.
That's the benchmark. How can you get that so that everything else still functions? And we're all fed, we're all getting our exercise, we're happy, we're doing our homework, we have quality time together, and it's that. That was it for us.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I'd like a Betty.
I know, right? I should
Not,
start a course, how to get a Betty.
yeah. I think you have a lot of people that would buy that course, actually, Renée.
Yeah, I know. And she is amazing. Amazing. So she's the type of person that is like makes executive decisions that are just so bang on. Like one is she was helping us get our license plate for our vehicles when we moved to BC. And my husband wanted to get a custom license plate in which he couldn't get his like acronym because it wasn't available. And so she has an acronym that, instead of like get it done, she says make it done, right? So MID, make it done. Oh, don't worry, I'll make it done today. So when she was at the DMV getting his license plate done, she couldn't, like, he wasn't available to answer the call and she needed to get something right away. So she made up her own. And so she drives his car home, right? It's fancy SUV. And like all of a sudden she has this custom license plate that's part him, part her. It is hilarious.
Amazing.
And you just got to find those people that just get it, right? Whether it's like a nanny or a house manager or anybody in your team, they have to get it. And that's hard to interview for. But yeah, we went through some interesting people, but we finally found somebody. And now she's helped shaped who that next person will be once she moves on, moves up sideways, or leaves us. Well, someday.
I think the big thing for me in this is asking for help. And there's no shame in that. And I think we often, especially as women, feel like we've got to do it all. We've got to be the superwoman and the super mom and the super spouse and the super entrepreneur, and that we're supposed to do all of these things without any help. And I think that is a fallacy. And I think when you've got the help, you can do more. You can do the more of the amazing things and help more people and have more time with your kids. And it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Let me tell you a quick story here on this. So I'm not the mom who has my kids with the perfect haircut and clean shirt for picture day at school. I'm also not the mom who has their Halloween costumes ready months in advance. It'll be like 2 minutes before we're out the door. I'm like, gotta slap something together. And I'm not the mom that has every Christmas present perfectly wrapped, color coordinated underneath the tree. I may have done this once. The only really extravagant birthday party I had for my child was somehow ended up being Noah's first birthday. Timing was perfect. And I put this like Martha Stewart type birthday party together, which I was proud of. But there's other friends of mine who are mothers that have this stuff figured out. And everything is just so like clean and put together and matchy and all this stuff. And one time, one of these moms, after doing this, came up to me and said, Renee, I admire so much what you accomplished as an entrepreneur and a mother. And here I am feeling so defeated because everything on the table matched,
Mm.
right? The Fox cookies matched the Fox cupcakes and the napkins, and like the child was dressed like matchy. And I was like, oh, so interesting. Because here I am thinking, wow, this woman's got it together. And there she is thinking of me. Holy geez, she's accomplished a lot.
Yeah.
And which tells me is like, we're in these positions where I'm like, I wish I could do that. And then she's like, I wish I could do what she's doing. But meanwhile, in our own right, who we are, we're authentically accomplishing something that is true to us. So it was a beautiful moment.
I think we don't know what people are thinking, and I think that's such a perfect example of, you think somebody's life is so much better, but the reality is maybe they think yours is too.
Yeah. And we also don't know like the behind the scenes.
No, we don't, definitely. Okay, so we're going to wrap up shortly. I feel like that was so important to talk about because I think being an entrepreneur, a mother, there's so much wrapped up in that. And I think what I would love to do just in the last couple of minutes, obviously you have a, content marketing and PR company, and, entrepreneurs are who are going to be watching this. So can we just spend the last couple of minutes here talking a little bit about PR and what would be, if you had like 3 minutes, 4 minutes to like give some insights, what would you share?
So I used to run a PR agency, and we worked with funded tech companies from all over the world. And that's kind of how I would say with my most successful company in terms of growth. And now I still do PR, and I love it. And I work with select few female entrepreneurs at a time. The couple tips I can give to anybody who's starting on this path is always say, like, make sure that the foundation is ready to go. And what I mean by that is your personal brand, especially if it's like you're pitching yourself, which includes your social accounts, your website.
Yeah.
And while you're doing that, as in your messaging is straight, it's like if you're pitching and you're linking to your website, is it up to date with up-to-date photos and messaging and links to your services or products? A lot of people get this wrong. And like, realistically, this is something you should be updating all the time. Google actually likes websites that are updated, just so you know.
Yes.
And then really rallying your 100 biggest cheerleaders. If you are launching anything, like for instance, I launched the morning practice planner.
Nice.
And if I didn't rally my 100 biggest, truest fans, I don't feel like I would have had the confidence to keep selling it. Yes, these are friends and family, but new acquaintances and new friends too. These are my cheerleaders. So anytime I launch anything or I have a podcast that goes out, these are people that are buying it, they're writing reviews, they're sharing it, whether or not they're actually going to use the planner.
Yeah.
And that's what we need, is to create that small but mighty community that is going to amplify your message. And so when you're doing this, so if you're pitching, and now these people are going to look, oh, geez, she's look at her Instagram account or her YouTube show, and they're going to see that there's people that actually care about the content that's being put out. So why I say only work with select few people is because these female entrepreneurs need to actually have this engine already going in order for it to be more successful in pitching.
Right. So PR is more effective when you've already got something that exists. You've got those cheerleaders, you've got content, people are engaging. It's not like I'm starting a brand new company and I've got 0 followers, no engagement, no history.
Yeah. And in those moments, you kind of have to, I hate to say it, but prove yourself. Right?
Yeah.
But people, here's the thing. In order to get news, you have to create news. And what I mean by that is in order to get any sort of media coverage, whether it's you being a guest on somebody's show or podcast, is you have to have done something that's kind of significant. Yeah. You liked my story. So you're like, hey, come on to the show, Renee, explain it to the audience. That makes sense. Yeah. But if you haven't really established yourself or had these big wins yet, it's harder to actually pitch because they're like, well, what have you done? What's your significant story? And if you're not there yet, that's okay. You just got to put in the time to create that significance, because you can't really pitch anything unless you have a hook.
Yeah.
And so think about what's the hook, but like, don't overextend yourself. Don't try too many things at once. It's focus on one goal and do that. So rally the troops, get your community together to support you in what you're doing. And then just make sure that foundation is set. And then when you do start pitching, it's a lot easier.
Yeah, I love that as a first step for people, because I know I found a lot of people like, well, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to ask them, but they won't necessarily share your post or promote it if you don't ask them. And sometimes all you have to do is say, hey, I'm promoting my book right now. You're promoting your planner. Will you share it? Will you comment? Will you help me get this out to more people? And like 95% or 99% of the people that you ask will say yes, and they will do it.
Yeah.
But if you don't ask, then they don't know that you need that support.
Yeah. And the other thing that works too is collaborations to leverage somebody else's audience.
Yeah.
And it's not saying using somebody else's audience. It's just connecting to a relevant person who's already built that foundation.
Yeah.
And then offering so much value that they can't say no.
Yeah.
And that's so for like our PR agency, we did that in the content marketing side of things when we partnered with all the top blogs at the time. Like I'm talking like Neil Patel and the Column 5 people. Column 5 people are the ones that like kind of invented the infographic. So back in like 2011, when everyone was doing it, I was working with them. And so we would partner with all of these top blogs to co-create content. All of a sudden our email list went through the roof. Our credibility went through the roof. People were like, hey, like we couldn't even stop the phone from ringing. People were like, hey, we want to work with you. We want to work with you. And that was like the boost that we needed to actually be like, to create that authority in the space.
Yeah. And that's really what it is. It's about creating authority in your space.
Yeah. Credibility to become that go-to person for that specific topic.
Absolutely. Yeah. So Renee, you have your planner. Can you hold it up again? It's so beautiful.
It is. It's pretty.
It's pretty. The Morning Practice Planner. We will share a link. So if anybody wants to buy it, what's your favorite thing about the planner, Renee?
I feel like I'm on QVC right now.
I know. Your little Vanna White,
My favorite thing about this planner is it actually starts, it's very like Danielle Laporte. The beginning of it starts with exercises. So it's not just a daily planner. Like you have to go through these exercises and creating your missions, your values, your repeatable morning actions, how to make decisions, tracking your results. And then you actually get to the daily pages. What I love about this is how it was co-created with some of my friends. So I created the skeleton for it and wrote it, had an editor come back, and I'd send it to my friends and be like, hey, I feel like you're the ideal customer for this. Can I just send you a PDF of something I'm creating? What do you think? They're like, well, you know what? Actually, I need this, or I need this. But one of my dear friends, Amanda, who is just recovering from breast cancer, she helped me in adding this line to the book, which I think is so profound, is every morning you answer the question, what I love the most about me today is. And it could be anything as little as I love that I had a great sleep, or I love that I didn't have 2 cups of coffee, or, I love that I get to snuggle my kids. I love how I've inspired other people. But the reflecting on what I love about me it's really important. And it just kind of sets the stage for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Renee, I love what you've created. I've loved this conversation. I love that planner. I love the intention behind it and what it's really helping people to do in their lives and create those morning habits. So we will share the link in all the places. So if anybody's interested in buying a planner, you can do that. Renee, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, they can go to wewildwomen.com. Or they can find me on Instagram, Renee with 2 E's _Warren.
Amazing. Thank you again, Renee. And I can't wait to continue. Next time we'll dive deeper into other things, but I feel like we need a part 2. That was
we do.
amazing insights that you shared with everybody today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye, everybody.